So I guess to kind of kick it off for you, how did this project in particular come about for you? Was this something that you pursued originally, or was it something that came to you with? How did this get started for you? There's like a wild auction going on right outside the door. Yeah, there's cattle or something being auctioned off.
I had made a movie before Christine that tanked at the box office. It was called The Thing. El Tanko. So I needed a job. And my producer, Richard Kovritz, said, "Have you read this new King book? It's about a haunted car." And I thought, oh boy, a haunted car. It had been done. I thought, what am I going to do differently? So I got involved in it because I needed a gig, and I hired this fabulous cast, two of whom have become young auteurs in their own right. Stockwell and Gordon are directors. And it came about because it was an assignment at Columbia. So a friend of mine, Bill Phillips, wrote the screenplay, and we went out and shot it, and I hired these bums here.
Now, how important was it for you to, obviously, every Stephen King book that gets made into a movie, at some point or another, goes through changes, because either the book is like 20,000 pages long, or there's reasons that they can't include everything. And it seemed to me like Christine, for the most part, was rather faithful to the book. But there are certain subtle changes, particularly towards the end. How important was it for you to keep a lot of this as close to the book as possible, or as close to Stephen's vision as possible?
Well, Christine, the novel, had really great characters in it, so we didn't have to go very far away from that. But it had the rotted corpse of the former owner sitting in the back seat talking to Keith all the time. I thought, I don't know about that. That might be really stupid. So maybe we'll let Keith carry that part on, by himself, rather than having a conversation with this dead guy. So that's one of the big things we changed. And we wanted to have some big ending where the car gets butt fucked. So
I want to make sure that you guys get a chance to ask some questions. So if you have questions, raise your hand, and we'll try to get around to everybody if we can. Does anybody want to kick this off with a question right here? How about you? Keith, talk about Robert.
Oh, so to talk about Robert Prosky. Well, Prosky was both a brilliant actor and a sweet, sweet guy. I mean, it's funny, so many character actors were great at playing the meanest, most awful sons of bitches are like the nicest people. And that was certainly Robert. And he was just delightful to work with. He was funny. He came from this great stage background and played every great role in the world. And just, man, it was fun to work with him. And he died a couple of years ago, which was really sad. I'd always wanted to get a chance to work with him again and never did. But he was wonderful. And he brought so much life to that guy. I mean, just that deep voice that he had and all that. None of that was Robert. I mean, Robert couldn't be more different from that guy. But he was great.
Next one. What do we got? Right over here.
Hi, John. You are a composer as well as a director, and I know a lot of times in the process of doing a film, when you're managing the composer, there's a whole timeline. How does the timeline change when you're both directing and writing a score for a film?
Well, I don't really write a score because I've sort of forgotten how to write music, so it's all improvised. So in the case of Christine, we cut the movie together, and I go off to a studio with a bunch of synthesizers and just start ad-libbing music to the movie. And there's one scene between, actually the two of them. They're sitting in a car with a big dialogue scene. I wrote this piece of music that just keeps continuing. It just doesn't have an end to it. It's descending chords. I remember the sound mixer says, we can play this over anything. It'll work over anything. So my job is like, I lay carpet in your house. I put carpet underneath your feet so that you walk and it's comfortable. That's what I do for the movie. I put carpet under a scene. If it's tension, I put that under there. I try to give some mood and elevate the scene as much as I possibly can.
This kind of begs an interesting question that I've been wondering about. I've always enjoyed your music in movies. Have you ever thought about doing like a self-contained, the music of John Carpenter, and maybe even take your take on some classic movie themes?
No.
Okay, that answers that question. Next. Did I see one? I thought I saw one over here. You guys don't have questions? All right, right. We got somebody down there. No, it's right there.
When did you recall that?
George Thorogood, the guy who sang Bad to the Bone, had a scene in a movie at the end of the film. And it was with the writer, Bill Phillips, and we cut it out because they couldn't act.
He's still in the film. He plays that guy with the boombox at the very end. He just doesn't have dialogue.
That's correct. That's correct. That's right.
But he has scenes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They had reactions. Oh, it was unbelievable.
John, I know there was a lot of scenes that were deleted from the film that ended up on the special edition DVD that came out. At the time, was it really painful to have to take some of those scenes out of the movie, or was it more of just kind of it made sense at the time to adjust it that way?
It was just that it made sense. There were a couple scenes I wish we could have kept, but there was one where you pull up behind them. It was a real cool scene. I think it was because of your performance that we took it out. No, not really. There was one scene that Keith did that was really great. I wanted to leave in, but powers that be thought, well, let's don't put that in there. So, but generally we kept everything in.
Did you test it?
No. It didn't test in those cases.
How do you feel that the sensibilities, and this is for everybody, how do you feel the sensibilities of horror films today have changed in comparison to the early 1980s? Obviously it was a very different time. Nobody wants to take this one.
The sensibilities. Well, John has made a recent horror film. And how's it, and tell me seriously, how's it different from the old days? Hang on.
Well, I found it's very difficult to keep up these days. I mean, I made a movie called Turistas,
Yeah.
and at the same time, they were making a movie sort of concurrently. I didn't know about it, called Hostel. And when I went to see Hostel, I was like, I don't know if I can, the torture porn thing just wasn't for me, and it was hard. It was a sinking feeling because I knew it would do well and that we would be considered to be imitators. But I don't know. It's a world in which I remember first seeing Halloween and just being so blown away by it. A lot of it is just tone and mood and what you don't see and tension, and that's harder and harder to get by with. So, John.
It's fabulous, John. I couldn't say it any better than that. What do you think, Keith?
Well, I guess for me, and there are exceptions, but what I remember from the films of the 70s and the 80s, and your films always had this, was there was a sense of irony, there was a sense of a larger social point often going on, and They Live or Escape from New York, or that horror films weren't just about making an audience jump. There was something else going on, and they were often very intelligent movies. And I feel like too often now, and there are exceptions, but too often the film exists only to shock, and often in a horror porn sort of way. It's like, how gross can you get? And I think that's sad, because it used to be a vehicle where you could be very subversive and introduce some really interesting ideas, and that's what I loved about your films. And I feel like, no, The Thing had that. I mean, and I feel like now you try to do that in the studios while I'm screaming. I mean, I'm in the middle of working on a script that's kind of got a horror theme, and all the things I want to take out are all the things that attracted me to it, all the ideas, basically. So.
I would say just one thing that I'm not an expert like these guys, but one of the things that maybe some of you know about John, maybe some of you don't, is this guy's got a wicked sense of humor. And I think that the odd thing is you see that wicked sense of humor if you look at individual snippets in the film. Maybe if you know